There's something you remember, crystal clear, vivid, detailed. You can picture it exactly. The problem? According to every record, every person, every piece of evidence in this reality, it never happened. And I'm not talking about misremembering a minor detail. I'm talking about remembering something significant, an event, a conversation, a fact about the world that is completely absent from this timeline. And the more certain you are that you remember it, the more proof you have that you didn't originate here. This isn't a vague feeling. This is concrete memory. You remember a family member dying years ago, mourning them, attending a funeral, but they're alive, and everyone acts like you're insane for suggesting they ever died. You remember living in a different city as a child. You can describe the house, the neighborhood, the school, but records show you never lived there. Your parents have no memory of it. Photos don't exist, it's been erased, except from your mind. Or maybe it's a historical event. You remember it happening one way, specific details, specific outcomes. You're certain, but when you look it up, everything says it happened differently. And not just differently in interpretation, differently in basic facts. And you're left standing there with a memory that is absolutely real to you and absolutely absent from consensus reality. Most people have at least one of these memories. Something they remember that doesn't fit. Something they've learned to keep quiet about because mentioning it makes people question their sanity. But here's what nobody tells you. These aren't false memories. False memories are vague, unstable, easily influenced by suggestion. They shift and change when challenged. Timeline memories are concrete, consistent, and often shared by small groups who came from the same branch. A false memory feels uncertain. You kind of remember, maybe it was like this, you're not really sure. A timeline memory feels absolutely certain. You know what you remember. You can access sensory details. You can recall emotional states. You can describe specific moments. The memory is complete and coherent. It's just that according to this reality, it never happened. And if you have one of these memories, if something in this video triggers recognition of an impossible memory you've been carrying, pay attention, because you're about to find out where you really came from and why your memory isn't broken. This reality is just different from the one you originated in. Your memory is evidence. Evidence that you shifted timelines, and you brought receipts from a place that doesn't exist here anymore. Let me explain how you can remember something that never happened here. Because understanding the mechanism is what allows you to stop doubting yourself and start recognizing what these memories actually prove. Your consciousness is the only element that remains constant when you move between timelines. Your body exists in this timeline. Your brain is physical matter that belongs to this configuration of reality. But your consciousness, the aware, observing part of you, that's non-local. It doesn't belong to one timeline. It navigates between them. And when it does, it carries data with it. Data we call memory. When you shift from timeline A to timeline B, your physical brain updates to match the new configuration. Neural pathways reorganize. Synaptic connections rewire. Your brain becomes consistent with this timeline's history. But consciousness doesn't rewire that easily. It holds information. And some of that information is memory from where you came from. Memory that doesn't match where you are now. Most of your memories do update. This is why timeline shifts usually go unnoticed. Your brain has a process called memory reconsolidation. Every time you recall a memory, you're not playing back a recording. You're reconstructing it. And during reconstruction, your brain can edit the memory to make it consistent with current reality. This happens automatically. It's protective. It maintains your sense of continuous identity and stable reality. But some memories resist reconsolidation. Memories that are emotionally charged. Memories that are identity-defining. Memories that you've reinforced repeatedly. Memories that are recent to the moment of shift. These memories are too strong, too embedded, too fundamental to be rewritten by the brain's attempt to create consistency. And those memories remain intact, accurate to the timeline they came from, completely inconsistent with the timeline you're in now. This is why you can remember something with absolute certainty but have zero evidence it happened. The memory is real. It's accurate. It just didn't happen here. It happened in the timeline you shifted from, and your consciousness brought it with you, like luggage from a trip nobody else took. And when multiple people share the same impossible memory, this is the Mandela effect, it means they shifted together. A group consciousness moving from one branch to another, all carrying the same data from the previous configuration. The memory isn't false. The timeline is different. And the memory is proof that you came from somewhere else. Not all timeline memories are the same. There are 5 distinct types, and recognizing which one you have tells you something specific about the shift that brought you here. Let me walk you through each type so you can identify your own. Type 1. The phantom event memory. You remember a significant event that never happened in this timeline, a celebrity death that didn't occur, a natural disaster that has no record, a historical outcome that's completely different from what every source confirms. This type is characterized by emotional impact. You remember where you were when it happened, how you felt, who you talked to about it. The memory has full sensory detail. You're absolutely certain, but according to this reality, it never occurred. This suggests a clean break from a timeline where that event was real. Type 2. The alternate personal history. You remember living an experience that records show you never had. You lived in a different city. You had a different job. You attended a school that has no record of you. You had a relationship that doesn't exist in photos or documents. This type affects your sense of identity because it's about your own life, not external events. You have detailed memories spanning months or years. You can describe daily life during that period, but there's no evidence it happened here. This suggests you merged from a timeline where your life path was different. Type 3. The impossible knowledge. You know something you shouldn't know. You have information about a person you never met in this timeline. You have skills you didn't learn here. You possess knowledge with no identifiable source. This isn't about remembering events. It's about knowing things that don't have explanation in your current history. This type suggests consciousness transfer where information came through, but the experiences that created that information didn't. Type 4. The shared divergence. A small group, family members, close friends, shares a memory that the rest of the world doesn't have. All of you remember an event, a conversation, an experience. You can validate details with each other, but it doesn't exist in any official record, and nobody outside your group has any memory of it. This is evidence of group shifting. You moved together from a branch where that shared experience was real. Type 5. The childhood timeline. You have vivid memories from early childhood that your parents completely deny. Not childhood fantasies or imagination, specific events, places, people, experiences. You can describe details you shouldn't know. The memories feel more real than most of your other childhood memories. But your family has no recollection, or they remember it completely differently. This type is common because childhood memories form before heavy social conditioning, and young consciousness is more fluid between timelines. Close your eyes for a moment. Think of a memory that has always felt off. A memory that when you mention it, people look confused or deny it completely. A memory with no supporting evidence but absolute internal certainty. That's your timeline memory. And it's not false. It's evidence of where you came from. So if you shifted timelines, if you came from a different configuration of reality, why didn't you notice? Why do most people go their entire lives carrying timeline memories without recognizing what they actually are? Because your brain is actively working against your awareness. Not maliciously, protectively. Your brain's primary job isn't to show you truth, it's to keep you functional. And the truth that you've moved between different versions of reality, that your memories don't match consensus history, that nothing is actually stable or fixed, that truth would break most people's ability to navigate daily life. So your brain hides it. It smooths it over. It creates the illusion of continuity even when continuity doesn't exist. Every time you recall a memory, you're not accessing a perfect recording. You're reconstructing it from fragments. And during that reconstruction, your brain has the opportunity to edit, to adjust details, to make the memory more consistent with current reality. This is called memory reconsolidation, and it happens automatically every time you remember something. Most of your timeline memories get gradually rewritten through this process without you even noticing. The memory shifts slightly each time you access it, until eventually it matches this timeline's history. But some memories resist. The ones that are too emotionally powerful, too identity-defining, too frequently reinforced. These memories remain intact despite your brain's attempts to rewrite them. And those are the ones that create cognitive dissonance. You remember something clearly, but reality says it didn't happen. And that dissonance is uncomfortable, destabilizing. So social pressure kicks in. You mention the memory to someone. They have no recollection. You mention it to another person. They look at you like you're confused. You check records. Nothing supports your memory. 10 people tell you you're wrong. 0 evidence says you're right. And the pressure to doubt yourself becomes overwhelming. So you do what most people do. You rationalize. You convince yourself it must be a false memory. You bury it. You stop talking about it. You learn not to trust your own recall. But doubt doesn't erase the memory. It just suppresses it. The memory is still there, filed away under things I don't talk about because people think I'm crazy. And it stays suppressed until something breaks the suppression. Until you find another person with the same impossible memory. Until you discover communities of people discussing the Mandela effect. Until someone validates what you've been carrying alone. That validation is powerful because it breaks the consensus reality override. You're not alone anymore. You're not the only one who remembers. And suddenly the memory stops being something you doubt and becomes something you investigate. Evidence instead of error. Proof instead of malfunction. Your memory didn't fail. Your reality shifted. And your brain has been trying to protect you from that knowledge by making you doubt what you clearly remember. But the memory is still there. Accurate. Real. Just not from here. Not all timeline shifts leave memories behind. Most shifts are small, subtle, seamless. Your brain rewrites them instantly and you never notice. But some shifts are so dramatic, so profound, that they leave timeline memories you can't ignore. Let me explain the 3 types of shifts that create the memories you're carrying. Shift type 1, trauma, near-death induced. This is the most violent type of timeline shift. Something catastrophic happens, a near-death experience, severe trauma, sudden devastating loss. An event so massive that it literally tears you out of one timeline and throws you into another. Your frequency doesn't just shift, it shatters. And when it reconstitutes, you land in a completely different configuration of reality. This type leaves the strongest timeline memories because the shift is impossible for your brain to smooth over. The before and after are too different. The transition was too abrupt. You remember the previous timeline clearly because the new one feels fundamentally wrong in ways you can't articulate. People who survive near-death experiences frequently report that reality feels different afterward. Not just that they feel different, that the world itself has changed. Details are off. People behave differently. The texture of reality is altered. That's because they didn't just have a transformative experience, they shifted timelines. And they brought memories from where they were before the event that almost killed them. Shift type 2, collective mass shift. This is what creates the Mandela effect. Large groups of people shifting together from one timeline configuration to another. This happens when collective consciousness reaches a threshold. When enough observers are holding a specific frequency, reality can reorganize around that frequency, and entire populations move from branch A to branch B simultaneously. This type leaves shared memories because multiple observers are bringing the same data from the previous configuration. When you and thousands of other people all remember something the same way, but that something doesn't exist in current records, you're all carrying memory from a timeline you collectively departed. The shift was big enough to move groups, not just individuals. And the shared nature of the memory makes it harder for your brain to rewrite because you have external validation. Other people confirm what you remember. That confirmation anchors the timeline memory and prevents reconsolidation. Shift type 3. Gradual frequency elevation. This is the subtlest but most common type. You don't have one dramatic shift. You have hundreds of micro-shifts over months or years as you do deep inner work, heal trauma, expand consciousness, elevate your dominant frequency. Each individual shift is small enough that your brain rewrites most of it, but occasionally, a shift is significant enough that one or two memories remain intact. You remember a version of your life, a version of yourself, that doesn't quite match where you are now. This type creates the personal history timeline memories. You remember living somewhere you have no record of living. You remember a relationship that doesn't exist in photos. You remember a version of your past that your family doesn't confirm. Not because you're confabulating, but because you gradually shifted from a timeline where that past was real into a timeline where it wasn't. The shifts were slow enough that most memories updated, but a few critical ones, usually the emotionally significant ones, remained as artifacts from previous configurations. And here's what determines whether a shift leaves timeline memories: the speed of the shift and the emotional intensity surrounding it. Fast shifts leave more memories because your brain doesn't have time to reconsolidate. Emotionally charged shifts leave more memories because emotion creates stronger neural encoding that resists rewriting. And shifts that affect your core identity leave more memories because identity-defining experiences are protected from reconsolidation by your brain's need to maintain a coherent sense of self. So if you have timeline memories, they're not random. They mark moments when you shifted timelines under conditions that made the memory too strong to erase. Trauma that ripped you between realities. Collective movements that you participated in with thousands of others. Or gradual elevation that occasionally created jumps big enough to leave evidence behind. The memory isn't a glitch, it's a marker. Proof of transition. Evidence that you came from somewhere else and you remember the journey even though this reality has no record of it. If you recognized yourself in any of this, if you have memories that don't match this timeline, if you've been carrying impossible knowledge or phantom experiences that everyone tells you never happened, I need you to hear this clearly. You're not losing your mind. You're not experiencing false memories. You're not broken or confused or unreliable. You're remembering accurately. You're just remembering a timeline that isn't this one. And that memory is evidence that you didn't originate here. You shifted, maybe through trauma, maybe through collective movement, maybe through gradual frequency elevation over years of growth and transformation. But somewhere along the way, you moved from one configuration of reality to another, and you brought memories with you that don't belong to this version of the world. And those memories have been making you feel crazy because nobody else confirms them, no records support them, and consensus reality denies them completely. But consensus reality isn't ultimate reality. Consensus reality is just the most common configuration that the majority of observers have collapsed into. And you carrying memories from outside that consensus is proof that you've navigated between configurations. You've experienced something most people don't even know is possible. You've moved between timelines, and your impossible memories are the receipts. And here's why this matters. Here's why recognizing your timeline memories changes everything. Because once you stop doubting them, once you accept that they're real memories from a real place that just isn't here anymore, you unlock something profound. You realize that if you shifted once, you can shift again. If you moved from there to here unconsciously, you can learn to move consciously. If reality is fluid enough that you've already navigated between versions of it, then you're not stuck. You're not trapped. You're not locked into this configuration forever. The timeline memory proves that reality is responsive, that consciousness moves, that you're not a fixed entity in a fixed world. You're a navigator, and you've been navigating your entire life without knowing it. But now you know. And knowledge changes capability. Awareness creates agency. You're not just discovering that you shifted in the past. You're discovering that you can shift in the future, deliberately, consciously, toward timelines that match what you actually want, instead of randomly bouncing between configurations based on unconscious frequency. And you're not alone in this. Every person who has timeline memories, every person who resonates with the Mandela effect, every person who remembers things that never happened, they're all navigators too. They all shifted. They all carry evidence. And together, you're proof that reality is far more fluid than mainstream science admits. That consciousness isn't confined to one timeline. That memory can cross between realities. That you're not from here, and that's not a problem. It's power. If you want to go deeper into how consciousness navigates realities, how to work with timeline shifting deliberately instead of accidentally, how to recognize when shifts are happening and move toward configurations you actually choose, everything is in Awaken Your Quantum Power. Link in the pinned comment. It's a complete framework for people who've realized they're not stuck in one timeline and want to understand how to navigate consciously. It won't give you the timeline memories, you already have those. It'll teach you what to do with them. But whether you explore that or not, you now have something critical. You have validation. Your memories aren't false. Your reality shifted. And you remember where you came from even though you're not there anymore. That memory isn't a burden. It's evidence. Evidence that you're capable of something most people don't believe is possible. You've already done it. You've already shifted. The only question now is whether you'll keep doing it unconsciously or whether you'll learn to navigate deliberately. You're not from this timeline. And that's not a tragedy. It's a gift, because it means you're not bound to this timeline. You're not locked in. You're fluid. You're quantum. You're consciousness experiencing reality, not reality experiencing consciousness. And once you know that, once you feel that, once you accept the evidence of your own impossible memories, everything changes. You didn't misremember. You remember correctly. This timeline is just different from the one where those memories were made. And carrying those memories makes you a witness. Proof that timelines exist. Proof that shifting happens. Proof that consciousness transcends any single configuration of reality. Your memory is evidence. And you are the evidence. Welcome home, not to this timeline, to the truth of what you actually are. A navigator. And you've been navigating all along. Here's what most people don't realize. You probably have more timeline memories than you think. You've just learned to categorize them as something else. Dreams that feel too real. Déjà vu that's too specific. Knowledge you can't source. Nostalgia for places you've never been. These aren't random psychological quirks. They're fragments. Pieces of timeline memories that didn't fully survive the reconsolidation process, but left traces behind. Think about your dreams for a moment. Not all of them. Most dreams are just your brain processing the day's information. But there are some dreams that feel fundamentally different. Dreams where you're living a completely coherent alternate life. You have different relationships, a different job, a different home. And in the dream, it all makes perfect sense. You know these people. You know this place. You have history there. And when you wake up, there's a grief. A sense of loss for a life that felt absolutely real but doesn't exist here. Those aren't just dreams. Those are memory fragments from timelines you've shifted through. Your consciousness touching configurations you used to inhabit. The dreams feel different because they're not constructed from imagination. They're reconstructed from actual data. Data that your waking mind has suppressed or reconsolidated, but your sleeping mind can still access when conscious filters are down. And déjà vu. You've been told it's just a misfire in your brain. A glitch in memory processing. But pay attention to the specific type of déjà vu where you don't just feel like you've been somewhere before. You know what's about to happen next. For 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you're experiencing something you've already lived. You know what the person is going to say before they say it. You know what's coming around the corner. That's not a neural glitch. That's timeline overlap. You're experiencing a moment that exists in multiple configurations, and your consciousness is recognizing it from a previous pass through this exact scenario in a different branch. Or the inexplicable expertise. You sit down at a piano you've never played and your fingers know where to go. You visit a city you've never been to and you know the streets. You meet someone for the first time and you know things about them you shouldn't know. Conventional thinking says you must have learned this somewhere and forgotten the source. But what if you didn't learn it here at all? What if you learned it in a timeline where you took piano lessons, where you lived in that city, where you knew that person? And when you shifted, the skill, the knowledge, the familiarity came with you even though the experiences that created them didn't. And then there's the strangest one. Nostalgia for things that never existed in your timeline. You feel homesick for a place you've never lived. You grieve a relationship you never had. You miss a version of yourself you never were. This isn't fantasy or wishful thinking. This is your consciousness remembering configurations where those things were real, where you did live there. where you did have that relationship, where you were that version of yourself. The nostalgia is real because the memory is real. It's just not from here. These fragments are everywhere once you start looking for them. The song that makes you cry for reasons you can't explain. Maybe it was significant in another timeline.